Welcome to my final project, which I titled Unspoken Bonds: Exploring Emotional Labor, Generational Expectations, and Storytelling in My Family. This is the visual component of my final paper. First, I want to introduce my family. I am formally a Moran, but I am part Woods on my mom's side. I couldn't include everyone in the photo, but as you can see in the top left are my two parents, Carrie and Dwayne. In the upper middle is my dad's dad, my grandfather, Dan. On the far upper right is my brother and I before he went to college for the first time. His name is Brendan. Below him is my older sister, Catherine. Next to her is my mom's dad, Paul, my other grandfather. Next to him are my younger cousins, Colin, Aiden, Grayson, and Ryan. And the only cousin missing from that photo is my cousin, Megan. And finally, my mom's mom, Kathy, in the bottom left. I chose to interview both my parents and my grandma. I interviewed my parents separately because they were raised in very different environments. My mom grew up in a very large, rather affluent family, while my dad came from a working class background with blue collar parents. As a result, their views on parenting, politics, and social values have always differed. I also believed it would be valuable to talk to them individually since they both embraced a more authoritarian parenting style before my siblings and I went to college, so I believed that they likely have insights into how communication boundaries have shifted over time in our family. I also believe that interviewing them could shed light on how both explicit and implicit family rules have evolved and how boundary management has changed as I've grown older and entered school. I also chose to interview my grandmother, who was like a third parent to me growing up. Since she and my mom are best friends, I saw her almost every day. It will be interesting to see how family communication patterns have been passed down through generations by interviewing both my parents and my grandmother. I chose to use Gettings and McNally as a starting point for my interviews, especially when looking at my grandmother's views on family roles and responsibilities. Growing up, like I said, my grandma was like a third parent to my siblings and I, but she also knew how to have fun, which is something this study touches on. I chose to use Lafreniere and Kulkarni's research to help me dive into how emotional labor plays out in my family relationships. Since their study focuses on parent-child disagreements, it'll be useful in understanding how my parents shifted from authoritarian to authoritative parenting and how that change affected our arguments. I also chose Koenig Kellas because my grandma is a first-generation American and I spent a lot of time hearing stories about her parents' life in Ireland. I think this source will help me understand how those stories have influenced my own life. To explore my parents' expectations of my siblings and I plan to use Moss et al. My dad's background in a working class family and as a first generation college student adds another layer to understanding this dynamic. Lastly, I chose Hosek and Harrigan to look into how my mom and grandma, both stay at home moms for a period of their life, influenced the division of labor in our home. Based on the concepts we learned in class and on my interviews, one area where my family really shines is my grandmother's role in connecting both individual family members and the whole family. According to Gettings and McNally, grandparents who take on a friend role are often linked to higher levels of open and honest communication, which is called conversation orientation. My grandmother really nails this dual role. She was always super close to my siblings and I, offering a balance of structure and fun, making her an important figure in our lives. Gettings and McNally also mentioned that grandparents often take an influential role, which blends both companion-like and parent-like traits. My grandmother's assertiveness and knack for hosting events while keeping close bonds with each family member really shows how much she shapes our family dynamics. This fit perfectly with Getting and McNally's research on how grandparents impact family life and individual development. Another strength in my family is the emotional labor my parents put into our relationship, which Lafreniere and Kulkarni point out as being key to resolving parent-child disagreements and improving relationship satisfaction. A great example of this is how my parents shifted from an authoritarian to an authoritative parenting style. When I was younger, my mom's strict rules and high expectations often led to conflicts. As Lafreniere and Kulkarni note, parent-young adult conflict, including the demand withdrawal pattern, may foster increased use of emotional labor in young adults' communication with parents as they work to protect themselves. Over time, though, she moved toward a more balanced, authoritative approach, which opened up room for healthier conversations. Similarly, my dad's intellectual openness and encouragement of meaningful discussions, even though he sometimes plays devil's advocate, shows how he uses emotional labor to encourage growth and understanding. Emotional labor can definitely be draining, but it's clear that both my parents have adjusted over the years, focusing on nurturing our relationships rather than maintaining strict control. Family storytelling has played a big role in my upbringing, especially through my grandmother's stories about her parents and their journey from Ireland. According to Koenig-Kellas, shared storytelling helps shape family identity and values. My grandmother's stories have really helped me feel a strong connection to our Irish roots, giving me a sense of pride and resilience that gets passed down through generations. She taught me how powerful stories can be in holding on to our cultural identity. As Koenig Kellas puts it, people tell stories in order to create and construct identity, socialize one another to cultural, societal, and personal values, moral beliefs, behavior, and actions, make sense of, and cope with difficulty. While my mom doesn't focus on storytelling the way my grandmother does, it's clear that my grandmother's approach shows how storytelling helps keep family bonds strong and assures we pass down the same values. Even with all the strengths, there are definitely some challenges, especially when it comes to expectations and how we divide the work at home. Moss et al. Talks about how cultural norms shape family roles, and that's something I see in how my mom and grandmother approach traditional values. Both have passed down religious practices and gender roles that still impact how tasks are divided between my siblings and I. As Moss et al. Notes, adhering to these gender roles infiltrates much of family life. However, perceptions and enactments of traditional gender roles may be shifting towards greater egalitarianism between male and female parents and spouses. For example, my brother usually handles the more physical outdoor chores, while my sister and I take care of the household tasks. This division of labor really reflects old-fashioned gender expectations that may be worth rethinking. Hosek and Harrigan's study on how working mothers view the division of labor really resonates with my family dynamics. Both my mom and grandmother were stay-at-home moms at different points in their lives, and because of that, they've set the tone for how things are divided in the family. A lot of the emotional labor and hosting still falls on them. As Hosek and Harrigan point out, across previous studies is a consistent argument that family labor is unequally divided, with mothers who tend to be women often contributing more time, effort, and energy than fathers. You can really see this in my grandmother's continued role as a provider, even in her 70s. While we are all grateful for her efforts, it does create a cycle of gendered expectations that might eventually take a toll on family relationships. I have come up with 3 ideas that could help address these issues. First, we could make chores and responsibilities more fair by having an open conversation about what each of us prefers or has time for. Hosek and Harrigan suggest that reframing labor is divided can make a big difference. For example, my brother could get more involved with indoor organizing, and I could take on outdoor tasks like mowing the lawn. Second, more open dialogue about expectations could improve how we function as a family. Moss et al. Highlights the importance of questioning traditional norms, like in Encanto, the Disney movie, where characters find a balance between family roles and individual identity. For us, this could mean talking openly about how traditions like religion align with how my siblings and I see things today. Lastly, if my mom and grandma shared more responsibilities with the rest of us, it could reduce their stress and make us all feel more connected. Lafreniere and Kulkarni emphasize how emotional labor affects family relationships, and inviting others, like my dad or siblings, to take on hosting or organizing roles could help lighten the load. This team load could create a more balanced and supportive dynamic. By adopting these strategies, my family can strengthen our foundation and create a more balanced and fulfilling home life. Open conversations about family roles can foster mutual respect and shared responsibility. Including everyone in family storytelling, not just my grandmother, allows us to honor our heritage while embracing modern perspectives. This approach can help us build a supportive dynamic that evolves with each generation's needs.